Hello, and welcome to the Table of Woo podcast, the place for lightworkers, mystics, healers, intuitives, empaths, and seekers. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle. I'm a psychic medium, mentor, somatic coach, educator, and energy healer who's been doing this work since 2015. Here at the Table of Woo, you'll deepen your spiritual connection, enhance your self-awareness, elevate your well-being, and empower yourself to live in your full alignment. Here at the Table of Woo, we normalize spiritual gifts and treat them with reverence and respect while having a really good time. This show is your sanctuary, a space where intuition leads, healing happens, and you learn to create a life that feels as good on the inside as it looks on the outside. This is the place where you can ask the questions you've always had so you can start to feel safer using your own spiritual gifts. Start by understanding what's impacting your energy and download your free energy audit at brendawinkle.com/audit. Whether you're building a heart-led business, you're just curious about crystals and oracle cards, you're seeing spirits, you want to reclaim your energy, or you're navigating your next chapter, this is your invitation to come home to yourself. Grab your seat at the Table of Woo podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Table of Woo podcast. I'm your host, Brenda Winkle, and I'm very excited and grateful that you are here today for episode 3 of this brand new podcast. So today we're going to begin a series of 3 episodes dedicated to signs. So we'll be talking about signs from departed loved ones, signs from angels, and signs from the universe or spirit guides. So today we're going to dive into signs from our departed loved ones. So if you're looking for a resource, I invite you to take a look at the book Signs, The Language of the Universe, written by Laura Lynn Jackson. It's a great book. She tells a lot of stories about the specific signs that she's found in her mediumship practice that come through with clients a lot. And I just really enjoyed that book. I thought it was nicely written and very readable. And so invitation to check that out, and I'll put the link in the show notes. So I'm going to tell you the top, I'm going to share with you the top 7 signs that your departed loved ones love to use to communicate with you. Now, keep in mind, this is not an all-inclusive list. Your departed loved ones are creative beings, just as creative as they were when they were living. And so if you see something or notice something outside of this list, that doesn't mean that it's not actually a sign from your departed loved one, okay? Because this is just the list of the most common signs. Doesn't mean it's all inclusive. Okay, so here are the 7 top most commonly used signs your departed loved ones are trying to use to communicate with you. Coins, butterflies, birds, clocks, electricity, songs, and dragonflies. Okay, so let's talk about each of these because there is more than just seeing the sign. There's actually a message there many, many, many times. Sometimes you'll be able to figure out and intuit that message on your own. And sometimes it's nice to have somebody that can be a communicator to ask questions for you. And so that would be that you would go have a reading done. And that's really the purpose of readings, especially if you're asking for a mediumship reading. Then you know that you're going to be communicating, hopefully, with the loved ones of your choice that have departed. So, and that is something that I offer, by the way, and it's also something that you can learn to do. You can actually learn to communicate with your loved ones on the other side if you don't already know. And if you already do know, you can strengthen that connection with just some intentionality and some practice. So let's talk about coins. When coins appear and they're gifts from our departed loved ones, they'll often be in some place that's like right in your path, whether it's a sidewalk or a hallway or a parking lot. And there have been 3 occasions where I have seen a coin appear in midair and fall to the ground. It happened once after my dog Sadie died. I was walking in the Washington Square Mall in Tigard, Oregon, and I saw this penny appear about 6 inches above the ground. It flashed its little bronzeness, and then it bounced on the floor a couple of times and landed flat. It was stunning. I would have thought that I was imagining it, except my daughter saw it too. And so there was no question that we were receiving a sign. And then the second time that it happened was really pretty recently. Both the second and third time it happened were fairly recent. The second time that this happened was in my house, and I was walking through the third floor of my house. I was walking down the hall between my office and the bedroom, and I had walked back and forth between the office and the bedroom multiple times throughout the day. And on this particular time, I looked down, and right at my feet was a dime. And it just sort of appeared. It was about 2 inches above the ground and then landed on the carpet. And that was really fun. And then, really recently, after moving into the place that I am now, I have a kitchen island and I have two step stools pushed up against the kitchen island so you can pull out a stool and sit and we can chat while I cook for you, which is one of my favorite things to do when my friends come over. And so I was walking around the island and I was just sweeping and moving the step stools out of the way to sweep underneath the stools. And a quarter appeared about 8 inches above the ground, just out of midair and fell to the ground, dropped and rolled right to my foot. And it was just such a beautiful wink. I'd been thinking about my dad, and to have that coin appear just felt really good. So, when I said that there's a message there, usually there's a message that will, for me, and of course, your intuition might not come in the same way that mine does. And so, we don't want to make one way that intuition comes in the right way because that would not be true. Intuition comes in a little bit differently for each of us. And in fact, you probably have way more access to intuition than you even realize because you're probably getting intuitive hits that you don't know are intuitive hits. But that's for another podcast episode. So when I'm saying you probably already know, you might know that, oh, it's from this person. And when you get that little certainty, that little download, trust it because it is probably from that person. And then they're trying to communicate with you. So, invitation to take a look at the coin and notice the number. There will be significance in the number for you, especially as it relates to that specific person that you were thinking about. They'll be reminding you of some special time that you spent together, or a fun memory, or a poignant memory. And you'll always know. You'll know it might take you a minute to think about it. You might have to kind of check your own limiting beliefs, your imagination police that are saying, hey, this is all in your head. It's not in your head. I promise you, it's not in your head. So with coins, it can be really, really fun. And if you see it, I promise you, it's for you. You can just assume it's for you. So butterflies are another common sign. And this reminds me to say something that is really, really important. When I was connecting with Spirit about creating this episode, one of the things that Spirit wanted me to be very clear about is that there is a little bit of a misinterpretation. Sometimes when we see a bird or a butterfly or something else, and people will say, oh, that is my departed loved one. And Spirit wanted me to remind you that's not true. So it's not like the spirit of my dad would inhabit a butterfly. That's not how that works. However, my dad could inspire a butterfly to do something and to do something close to me, but it's not him. He's a part of the sign. He's the one that inspired the sign and inspired the butterfly to fly in a particular pattern close to me, but it's not him. He has not taken over or like possessed the butterfly's body. That's not how that works. So, Spirit wanted me to be very clear to tell you that. Now, butterflies are such a beautiful sign, and they are often a signal that a departed loved one is just greeting you and saying hello and reminding you that you are loved. My really, really close friend, one of my best friends, Kathy Kearns, who was also my Reiki mentor, and we went to Sedona in March of 2025. And we took this pink Jeep tour. It was a really cool experience because I had called the company and I said, "Hey, we're two energy healers and we want to go on a pink Jeep tour and we want to see the vortexes. So which tour do you think would be the best for us?" And so the lady on the other end of the phone asked me a few more questions to get the vibe of what we wanted to do. She was like, "I've got you covered. I've got you scheduled." And so we showed up for our pink Jeep tour. And we waited for just a few minutes and we watched as different tour guides would call in different parties. They would call them by the last name or the first name of the person for their tour. And they were loading up different pink Jeeps. And so we were kind of wondering, I wonder who will be on our tour. And before too long, this man came up and he said, "Brenda, party of two." And so we walked with him and he said, "I don't know how this happened. This almost never happens, but you are the only two on our tour." And Kathy and I looked at each other and we kind of grinned and we're like, "Of course we are." And then when we got loaded into the Jeep, he was telling us that most of the time, if there's a tour that only has two people, it will be canceled and you'll have the opportunity to either reschedule or join another tour. But for whatever reason, that did not happen this time. And so we departed from the Pink Jeep place in Sedona and we started on our little adventure and we went up to the airplane vortex first, airport vortex. And while we were up there, he was telling us that the only time he's seen this happen with the Jeep tour is when somebody buys out the whole Jeep, which is about an $1,800 expense. Well, we didn't do that. We just bought two tickets and there we go. And then he was asking us like, "Why this tour? Are you curious about, the vortex from a science perspective? Are you curious about the vortex from a metaphysical perspective? What's the story?" And so we were like, "Well, we're both energy healers. We're definitely interested in the metaphysical, curious about the scientific part too." And he's like, "Wow, okay. Well, in that case, I'm going to do some things a little bit differently." And we smiled at each other and we're like, "Okay, why?" Well, it turns out our pink Jeep tour driver was also an energy healer, and so was his wife. And so they have done energy healing events all over Sedona, all over the vortexes, and he had the real inside scoop on so many things. So it was an incredible tour. And the pinnacle of the tour was when we had gone off road and we went on this unmarked dirt road. And I'm telling you, the only way we could have gotten on that road is a four-wheel drive like a Jeep, because sometimes it felt like we were going to tip over. And so we drove and drove on this unmarked, really rough road. And then we stopped in what felt like the middle of like just the road. And he's like, "All right, we're here." And I'm like, "Okay." So he starts to climb up this steep rock. It looked like stairs, but they were carved out of rock. And we get to the top of the plateau and we look out, and it's just a stunning view of the entire valley around Sedona. It's like breathtaking. And so we stayed there for just a few minutes and we were talking and just feeling in the energy, and it was really incredible. And then he's like, "All right, well, let's keep going." And so I hadn't noticed this. I don't know why, but I hadn't noticed there was another incline. And so we walked up the incline and then we came to the tippy top of this incredible plateau where there's nothing but view for 360 degrees. It was absolutely incredible. And so as we were there, I was like, "Something is happening to me. Something is happening. And I just need to sit down for a minute." And I just felt like overcome. I had all kinds of emotions. I had grief, I had sadness, I had joy, I had just emotionality, and they were just leaking out of my eyes at the top of this plateau. And so he's like, "Well, why don't I just give you a minute?" And so Kathy and I just sat down on the edge of this bluff or plateau or whatever you call it. And we were just sitting and we were pretty quiet, just watching, each of us having our own experiences. And it was very moving, like really incredible, profound experience. And so as we got up and we went back towards where the man left us, where our guide left us, um, from my right, out of literally nowhere, flies this yellow butterfly. And this yellow butterfly like flies up and he circles me, circles around me a few times, and then he will not leave me. He just continues to fly, 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 fly all around me. And Kathy and the guide were both standing there stunned, like, oh my goodness, will you look at this? This is such a beautiful message. So the guide had no idea that I'd lost my dad in August and had no idea that, I was hoping to communicate with him and connect with him on this trip. Um, had no idea of any of that. And yet he knew that this was something really profound. And he said, you have someone visiting you, don't you? And I was like, I do. I do. And that butterfly stayed with us as we were on that plateau. And then as we descended back down to the first plateau, the butterfly disappeared. And so, when you see those butterflies, especially I feel like the yellow butterflies are really significant and they just kind of appear out of nowhere and then they start to flit around you. That's definitely a message from a loved one. And it can be any butterfly. I've had the same thing happen with a blue butterfly in Bali. It was a really incredible experience. I've had the same thing with monarchs. So pay attention to butterflies. Birds. Oh my gosh, birds. I love this. So birds are so sensitive that I don't know exactly how the spirit world connects and communicates with the birds, but I know for sure they do. And so one time when my grandmother died in the 90s, and so my mom was an only child and she really misses my grandma. And she always felt like robins were a sign from my grandma. And there was one day that my mom was having kind of a tough time. It was when we were living in Boise. We lived in Boise at the same time, but not in the same house. And I happened to be there this morning and I was sitting at their little breakfast counter while my mom was doing dishes and she was looking outside because that's the way the fence, or not the fence, the sink was facing so that you would do the dishes and you could look out the window. And all of a sudden, there was a flock, an entire flock of robins that came and they just like descended upon the front lawn. It was the most incredible experience. And my mom just started to cry because she knew, she just could feel that it was a message from my grandma. And since my dad has died, we see eagles all the time. So much so that my nieces call them greagles from like grandpa's eagles. They call them greagles. And the eagle was really significant because my dad worked at Shadow State College and their mascot is the eagle. And so that's just really special. But you can see birds that come up and they sort of look at you a little bit longer than is typical, or they're less afraid than you would expect them to be, or they're flying in unusual or unpredictable patterns that seem out of character. Those are all messages from your departed loved ones. And a lot of times it's a message of greeting, like, hey, I'm here. I'm here. I'm with you. I'm still here. So pay attention to the birds that you see. And then clocks can be very fun. So spirits, especially newly passed spirits, have a way to connect with electricity really easily because they're just energy, right? And so a lot of times you can see things in electronics or in clocks specifically. So when my great uncle died, clocks were really significant because one year for Christmas, he and my family, my parents, my sister and her husband, and me and my former husband, we all exchanged clocks, but none of us had planned it. Like not one of us said, hey, I think I'm going to give you a clock this year. But for whatever reason, everybody exchanged clocks. And then it became a running joke in our family. And so when I took over my uncle's car after his death, the clock would always tell me he was there because it would like totally mess up the time. And that was a digital clock. And then I had an analog clock that was a gift from him. And when he needs my attention for something, he will make that clock be the wrong time, which is really interesting because it's a radio controlled clock that is supposed to be on the right time all the time. But I can get the messages from my uncle about what he's trying to communicate based on the numbers that he selects. And we'll talk more about the numbers specifically. And this is one of those areas where there's going to be just a little bit of overlap between talking about messages from our departed loved ones and from our angels, because both our departed loved ones and our angels can use numbers to communicate with us. And so pay attention. Like if a clock keeps stopping on a specific number, that's a message. Notice that, pay attention to that. If you start seeing a clock speed up and get really, really fast, it can be an invitation or a message that you need to slow down and be more mindful. And a lot of times, clocks will give signals like you're on the right track or, oh, you need to reconsider this. And so pay attention. Like if it keeps getting stuck at one particular number and it seems like it's really weird that, like, how could a kid get stuck every day at 2:14 and then it goes on again after about 20 minutes? Well, it's not an accident. That is a message from your departed loved one. So what you can do is just to sit in stillness if you're capable of that, just sit in stillness and talk with them. You can talk in your mind, you can talk out loud. You can also try journaling and journal and see if you can get their messages that way. And that would go for any of these signs that we're going to be talking about or that we already have talked about. So I mentioned electronics, and electricity is a really common way that our departed loved ones communicate with us because, again, they're energy. And so it's easy to do. And so you can see this in flickering lights or suddenly bright lights or lights that flick on and flick off without you actually turning them on and off. You can see it in televisions that suddenly pop on. And again, it's the energetic thing. So just start asking, like, what message do you have for me? And then I also want to name, because this happens a lot with uninvited spirits that may not be your departed loved ones, but maybe someone else's departed loved ones. They also do things with electricity. In fact, it's one of their go-tos. And so, if that's happening for you, it's going to be an invitation for you to set some spiritual boundaries. We'll talk about that on another podcast episode about how exactly to set spiritual boundaries, but just know that you can. You can set spiritual boundaries, especially if the other side is interrupting your sleep or your peace or your ability to be with your family or your ability to do your work. It's time to set some boundaries. Okay, songs are a big one. Oh, I didn't finish with electronics because one thing I wanted to say is um, it's very common that I will open a phone, my phone, and there'll be a picture there of somebody that is a departed loved one. That's just like a little glimmer, like a hey, I was thinking about you. So often I don't even have my photo app open on my phone, and I'll open it and it's my dad. And so it just feels really good. It feels like confirmation. So pay attention to what's open on your phone when you open it, because it could be that there's messages there that you've been thinking, hey, it's just a weird happenstance, a weird electronic glitch that's actually a message. Okay, so this brings me to songs. Um, our loved ones love to communicate through song lyrics. And so if you have kind of an unexpected, unpredictable set of songs that come up for you, pay attention to the lyrics or the song titles because there's something in it for you. As my dad was nearing the end of his life, um, it was a trying time, as you would expect. My dad has one brother who preceded him as in death. It was my uncle John, and they were very close. And my dad took it really hard when he passed. I mean, my dad was close with all of his siblings, but it's hard when somebody that you love dies and it's a sibling. I'm assuming based on my dad's experience. So as my dad got closer to his death, I could feel his siblings that are living. He's still got three living siblings, really feeling all the feelings about it. And, there was concern in the family. And there's this part of the process as somebody is in a health decline where you're in denial and you want it to be okay. And you're still like looking for all the solutions and all the things that are going to save him and all the things. And I think I was the first one to realize, like, oh, this is the new trajectory. Like, he's not coming back from this. There might be, highs and lows still within this, but this is not something where we're going to really recover from. And there was one evening, as soon as I realized that I put on a playlist that I have on Apple Podcasts, but the playlist played songs that I do not have in my playlist. It was 2 hours worth of songs that I don't have in my Apple Music. And every one of them had a message for me and for my dad, also from my Uncle John. And it was so moving. And, this was about 6 or 8 months before his death. And I remember having a conversation with my dad and just saying, "Hey, Uncle John's been visiting and he's been, this is what he's saying and these are the messages that he's giving." And for me, as somebody who does communicate with the other side, it's easy for me to actually get the messages. And so I just want to name that I talk about it like it's just easy for me because it is. But that doesn't mean that it's easy for you, and it doesn't mean that you're not intuitive if it's not easy for you. It just means you haven't learned how to do it yet, or maybe you don't want to do it. And there's love for that too. And so I'm making it sound like, oh, it's just as easy as talking to them, because for me it is. I do talk to them. And so if you want to connect with your loved ones, invitation to book a reading with me, I can definitely help you with that communication piece. And you can learn more about the readings that I offer on the website at brendawinkle.com/reading. And I think it's singular, but I think it's singular. Anyway, the point is, I want you to know that people can hear the messages, even if you can't. And you can probably if you just get still. So many of us, we're so busy and we have so much input from podcasts and shows and social media and other people's opinions that even if we're getting messages from our departed loved ones, it's hard to hear over the noise. And so on a different podcast episode, I'll talk to you about how to communicate and connect with loved ones. Can you tell I'm excited about this new podcast? Because I have so much content ideas. I mean, so many content ideas. I can hardly wait. So anyway, with the songs, there was when my daughter was in first grade, her first grade teacher lost her son. And we attended the funeral because I taught with this woman, and she's just a lovely, lovely human, and I wanted to support her. And there was one of her son's friends that stood up and spoke at the funeral and talked about how the night of his death, that there was a song communication that happened for him, where it was song after song after song after song that came on, and they were able to get the messages. So even if you don't talk to your departed loved ones or hear from them yourself, they're still trying to get the message to you in a way that you can understand. And so just notice and pay attention what is happening around you. And that brings us to our last sign, which is dragonflies. Dragonflies are a natural sign of transformation. And so it just makes so much sense to me that we would see, dragonflies or even ladybugs. I should have listed that in one of the top signs. But dragonflies are so common. They're definitely like a little whisper, a little kiss from the departed loved ones. So notice if you see a dragonfly in an area that you're like, wow, I didn't know dragonflies were here, or wow, I didn't know dragonflies did that, or they come and land on you or something. Understand that that is actually a message from a departed loved one. Okay, so again, I want to reinforce that this is not an all-inclusive list. There are lots of ways that your loved ones could be communicating with you, including like just seeing them. Like, especially young children often see their departed loved ones, even if they haven't met them yet. Like, let's say the baby was born after somebody that you loved died, and then the baby reports seeing somebody who looks just like that person. That happens because they're seeing them. Also, it's not uncommon for you to be able to hear them. And it'll be like something where you might think, gosh, did I imagine that? I could have sworn I just heard my voice or my name. But it happens more often than you think. So as I'm looking at my list, let's see, I can't read my writing. I wrote in a notebook this time and now I'm remembering. Okay, so I get in the flow when I write with my pen and the flow comes more easily than when I'm typing. But then I have to be able to read my writing. So I'm saying talk about how, oh, got it. I understand my own thing. So I was going to talk to you about how you can know that it's a departed loved one. So if you get it like centered in your heart space, so you're going to need to be like grounded, still, quiet. You're going to center your awareness around your heart. So maybe that means you place a hand on your heart or maybe both hands on your heart and just take some deep, deep, deep breaths and just get still and calm. And then for me, and again, this might be different for you, but I'm just going to share with you my methodology because it's the one that I know. For me, when it's a departed loved one, they come in from behind. So it will feel like they're standing behind my shoulders, like one shoulder or the other shoulder. And the shoulder that they come in on depends on what side of the family they were on. And so, like, one side signifies the dad's side of the family, one side signifies the mom's side of the family. And so, for me, I know when I'm speaking with a departed loved one because they're coming in, it feels like from my shoulder. And then the further back generationally they go, the bigger the distance feels like for me. And so, there's a distinction again, for me, when I'm connecting with loved ones about how they come in. And so I'll feel them first from behind. And I'm wondering if this is pretty common because have you ever heard somebody say, like, the hairs in the back of my neck stood up? Yeah, well, this is the same kind of thing. Now, the hairs in the back of my neck don't stand up for this, but sometimes I will definitely feel a presence or see or hear a presence at one of my shoulders. And then if it's an uninvited spirit, I set really, really firm boundaries, and I don't have uninvited spirits in my home very often. So that is something that we can talk about and I can teach you because it really is essential to set these spiritual boundaries. But at the risk of repeating myself, I'm so excited about this topic. I just keep going. So, again, let's just close it out by saying remember that when these signs appear, they are not your loved one, they are a message from your loved one. They are the messengers. And that my list is not all inclusive. There's lots of other ways they might be communicating with you, including like feathers or rainbows or gorgeous sunsets. And I'd love to know if you have specific questions about connecting with your departed loved ones. And oh, don't forget that I have created an Oracle card course for you. It's free. It's called Your Guide to Oracle and Tarot Cards. And you can access that at brendawinkle.com/oracle. And that can be a fun way to connect as well. Um, and then in our next episode, on episode 4, we're going to be talking about how you can connect with angels. So let me know what questions you have, and I'll make sure to answer them as well as I can inside the podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the Table of Woo podcast. Could you please do me a favor? Could you please give the podcast a rating and review wherever you're listening? Because it's such a new podcast. It doesn't have any ratings or reviews yet. And it would mean a lot just to get the ball rolling if you could give it a rating and review. It'd be very, very, very helpful because it's a brand new baby podcast. And if you are a listener of the podcast, I would love to know if this is hitting the mark for you. And if it's not hitting the mark, I'd also love that. I'd love to know that too, because I want it to be something that is of true service to you. Thank you for listening. Bye for now. Until next time.